Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today with a very special review. So this was not all intentional. Back in June of 2020, I did a re-review of Dragon Age Inquisition. After a lot of the Dragon Age community pleaded with me to give that game a second chance, I finally did, going through the full game and all of its DLC, providing a final review of the product. And I actually found myself enjoying a lot of it. But to cleanse myself, I ended up going back to Dragon Age Origins in the fall of 2020 and releasing my 2021 review for that game here at the beginning of this year. Then I realized, well, I've done all of the Dragon Age games so far. There's only one that's left, and that's Dragon Age 2. The timing of this is actually hilarious because once I beat the game again, Mark Dara actually posted on his Twitter account talking about Dragon Age 2, and I felt like everything had aligned. He talked about how it was originally going to be named Dragon Age Exodus, and it's one of the projects he's most proud of because of the time restraints that they had. And I really wanted to break this game back down, analyze it. Has Dragon Age 2 aged well? Is it worth your time? Do you need to see this story through to experience and possibly enjoy as well as understand where Dragon Age 4 is heading? I hope to answer all of those questions, pique your curiosity a little bit, and so let's get into it. By the way, your boy played this on an Xbox Series X, and that is quite important as we get into it. But let's start off with, as always, the story. One of the questionable decisions with Dragon Age 2 was taking the route of a voiced protagonist. In pretty much every single way in its design, it goes against Dragon Age Origins. While Dragon Age Origins is a tactical game, you have Dragon Age 2, which is action combat. While Dragon Age Origin had a silent protagonist and you had lots of choice and consequence, I feel like Dragon Age 2 has really narrowed its focus and you're playing as Hawke. So Hawke is a character who comes from Lothering, which is burnt down thanks to the Darkspawn, thus sending him or her to Kirkwall. Now Kirkwall is undergoing a massive mages versus Templars conflict. The Templars want to repurpose, for example, slave cages from the Imperial days to be used on the mages because mages should not rule men, they should only serve them. The reason behind this is because while magic has shown the potential to benefit people when it's not kept in check by, say, the Circle, then suddenly mages will turn to blood magic, or they'll start to listen to the demons in their head and they'll start to convert and eventually cause tons of destruction. So you have one side that wants to exert total control over another and the other is asking for freedom and trust. It presents a very interesting conflict for the Dragon Age universe, which is then carried into Dragon Age Inquisition in an important manner. Now Kirkwall as a city is overflowing and they're starting to close down entry, so you have this mounting war between two factions, a city that's overflowing, and now the Qunari are stuck there. They're, quote, waiting for their ship, end quote. But that goes on for 3 years as they quietly just watch humanity unravel. Dragon Age 2 features the best antagonist in the series, bar none. The Arishok, the way that he challenges the philosophies of all the factions, of all the races in Dragon Age, makes you think on a much deeper level about the entire universe than anyone else. The fact that they went from the Arishok to Corypheus kind of blows my mind now. While I don't think that, of course, Inquisition is really about the main antagonist, it's about the adventure and the choices you make and the relations you make and kind of being a politician, still, I felt Corypheus was very underwhelming, and especially when you look at the Arishok and all that he presents for the game. Like I said, really challenging the ideas of all sides and just saying that the Qunari are the ones who should actually lead because look what humanity's doing. Look how Kirkwall is unraveling. He presents a compelling argument, and that is the best type of villain, one that you can understand, and while you disagree, you see their reasoning behind it. It makes it tough to confront them, and at times you want to align with them, and I think that is one of the strongest parts of this game. Because not only do you have the worries of mages being possessed, but now the Chantry feels challenged by the Qunari beliefs. And these conflicts do not feel forced because these factions are so well represented by interesting characters who are very much rooted in their beliefs, especially your companions. You have Fenris, who's the representation of the suppression of the elves and wants magic controlled because of how he's been damaged by it. Meryl is a mage looking to take back the past of the elves, however. Then you have Anders, who has the justice living inside of him. Aveline is a city guard who is sort of in line with the Templars, but also not. They try to live separately. Varric is this storyteller. Bethany is family, so you have to care, but also she is a mage and represents that compelling aspect of what if you were connected to a mage who is being suppressed by the Templars. Each companion is a slice of the world, and it tries to lean into the very themes of Dragon Age 2. And while it can feel a degree cookie cutter, it really aids in building this entire conflict. What's really cool about Kirkwall is that I've appreciated over the years, it's just this individual conflict. You're not saving the world, you're not going from point A to point Z on the other side of Thedas. You're just in Kirkwall. And while that does absolutely have its drawbacks, the self-contained narrative and the actual location itself really does make things a lot more interesting. You feel like even though the choice and consequence can be hit or miss, you are making more impact. Now, when it comes to Hawke, I gotta be honest, I do think that this was a bad choice to leave this character voiced. The idea here, I believe, at least my interpretation, was create something like Commander Shepard for the Dragon Age universe. See if fans will fall in love with that same formula, because there is a lot of people who adore Commander Shepard. I think it's part of the reason why Mass Effect is so popular. Voice protagonists can help games. What the difference was that with Mass Effect, there was a lot of choice and consequence on top of that voiced protagonist. Whereas with Dragon Age 2, you can see those drawbacks. In the dialogue especially, you're limited to just a range of emotions, being sarcastic, being nice, being rude. It's just those. If there's anything cookie cutter, it is that, because the dialogue is heavily limited. And that's one of the major steps back when you compare it to Dragon Age Origins in its sequence of release. Nowadays, you can take a step back and just look at all of them because it's been so long. But when you looked at it after its release, and even nowadays, I did find the dialogue a bit underwhelming, and that is connected to the choices. Some of them are very subtle, and you'll see characters reappear throughout the story. But in terms of major choices, I did find it mostly an illusion. And after Dragon Age Origins, playing it just a couple months ago, this was still a big step back. Does that make the story less interesting? No, because at the core of it, you have Red Lyrium. You see, Red Lyrium is clearly very important to the future of Dragon Age, and I cannot overstate that. You see it impact the plot of Inquisition with the Red Templars, and we're seeing it very much present in Dragon Age 4. In fact, I would make the argument that Dragon Age 2 is equally as important to play before Dragon Age 4 as Inquisition is. Granted, Inquisition has Trespasser, which is sort of the lead into Dragon Age 4. But what happens within Dragon Age 2, I don't want to spoil it for all of you out there. I just want to let you know, there are a lot of plot elements established throughout the Mages versus Templars, the Red Lyrium, things that are rooted in this game that begin here that are important to be aware of for when you move into Dragon Age 4. It is not just this one-off game you can discard. Granted, it was made in about 18 months, so you can clearly see that all over the game. But when it comes to the story, it is important if you want to get very invested in the Dragon Age franchise. And I have to say, once the credits rolled, while the ending felt rushed, I was actually pretty satisfied. I liked the Dragon Age 2 story a lot more than I originally recalled. Part of that is my investment in the series. I felt like, hey, I'm looking forward to Dragon Age 4, so of course I'm going to care a little bit more about 2's story. But on its own, while I wasn't as in love with the cast of companions, because like I said, they represent slices of the world rather than just being themselves and building out different aspects of their personality outside of Fenris. Fenris is the best, of course. We need more Fenris in our lives. I need to get those Tevinter Knights comics. I've seen them. People have recommended them to me, and I need a little bit more of him in my life. But outside of that, I was not super drawn to any particular character. Of course, Varric is an exception because they continued to expand him in Dragon Age Inquisition. But outside of all of that, I do feel like the game really came together. And I feel like it was a worthwhile adventure, even if it had flaws in its writing, its flaws in having a voice protagonist, which I could not get attached to. It just didn't have that same energy there. But with that, enough about the story, the factions, and the lore. Let's talk about gameplay. One of my biggest gripes with Dragon Age 2 is that there isn't a camp. So as you travel from point A to point B in Dragon Age Origins, there is a camp where all of your companions reside. And so you can have all your conversations, progress all of their personal character arcs, do their loyalty missions, all of that stuff. Whereas in Dragon Age 2, because you're in Kirkwall and you're all scattered throughout a city where you'll have Merrill in the Alien Age, and then you'll have Aveline up in the Keep, you're constantly going through a bulk of loading screens because you have to go to their respective locations. Not everyone's in one place. And I get why. It wouldn't make sense why Aveline, the lead of the city guard, is going to be in your house, for example, all the time, especially if you haven't romanced her. And even if you do romance, say Meryl, which is my choice, she still lives in the elven alienage for a degree of time. And I'm like, what? Hold on, we're romancing. Shouldn't she be in the Hawk mansion? But what happens is a ton of load screens. It feels very disjointed and disconnected. And while this isn't a big deal if you're on Xbox Series X like I was, where the load times were boom, just like that, they were over in a heartbeat, it still was very frustrating because to progress the character arcs for Dragon Age 2, you really needed to make sure that you were ready to invest. It wasn't just like everything was there at once. You had to go to tons of different places. So you talk to a person, you leave, then you'd go to a new location, you'd kill a couple of people, then you'd load into a new location. Lots and lots of load screens, which I think on older hardware can make this game a tad infuriating. As for the actual combat itself, when you're in combat, like I mentioned, it's all action. So it's really fascinating to take a look at Dragon Age's combat as it's evolved over time. Like I mentioned, Dragon Age Origins was more so a evolution really of Knights of the Old Republic, this real-time turn-based combat where you can pause the action and plan out your party's moves. It really took that idea and took it a step further, and I appreciated Dragon Age Origins for that, and I feel like it played best in that manner. Dragon Age 2, once again, I think in the idea of being more accessible, took a reach at action combat, and it plays a lot like Smite on consoles, like a MOBA, where you have a one attack button that you're going to hold down, and when you do that, your character will just auto attack away. Then you'll have a bunch of face abilities. You hold the trigger, you have another set of face abilities, and then all of those buttons can do things like, for me as a rogue, I was backstabbing, I was doing explosive strikes, I was doing, I think, fend strikes or something like that. And so you just burn through all your abilities, take out all your enemies. And when you look at Inquisition, it sort of evolved into this idea of let's mend the two. So you have a tactical element, which I admittedly didn't make much use of, but then you also have the action element. And what's funny is that 2 feels a little bit smoother in its action. Inquisition was a little more janky, but Inquisition had more depth, comparably speaking, to 2, because 2 was lighter on builds and lighter on equipment compared to that of Dragon Age Inquisition, because, well, it's once again the time constraints that hurt it. So what you have is a really simple hack and slash Dragon Age game, and in concept that actually sounds pretty cool, and it's quite different from what we've seen throughout the entire franchise. So it's kind of novel in how it exists, and it's there, and it's something you can appreciate because you can look at how the series has progressed over time and how they sort of mended all the ideas together when it came to Inquisition. But on its own and in a review, I have to say I found it kind of boring, and in fact imbalanced. Once again, builds were not really super crazy fun to do like they were in even Inquisition, where your race mattered and then subclasses and specializations matter, where there were so many different levels of tinkering with your character. It's something that I gradually really came to appreciate as I dove more into, funny enough, Dragon Age 2. It created this whole perspective of, oh my gosh, this is way better than I actually realized, because I commended it in my review, but now I have a stronger appreciation for it because it really was a step up when you look at Dragon Age 2 to Dragon Age Inquisition. So yeah, simple action combat, really not that fun. If you're playing on a higher difficulty, it's kind of a headache just because of the AI balancing and the abilities, and they're not really as powerful, and it just doesn't seem as well thought out mechanically as something like a Dragon Age Inquisition. So I found the combat changes pretty disappointing. The mages in this game are really fun to play as, though. I will say I found myself switching a lot to my party members because the mages felt really good to play as, where you want to have that good balance of warriors, rogues, and mages. And I thought that dynamic was neat because you have the tanky two-handed Fenris, and you'd also have Varric with his crossbow and unique abilities to his crossbow, and then you'd have, of course, Hawk, who, my version of Hawk at least, was a rogue with 2 blades, and then I'd have Meryl with her mage abilities, and so there was a range of different ways to play throughout my party, and it felt like more necessary at times to switch between them. But given those AI struggles, like I said, the lack of depth and build from my experience, I felt like it was just a pretty simple hack and slash, and I didn't overall dig it as strongly. Throughout the game, you're going to go through a lot of dungeons, and a lot of these dungeons will be repeated. You will see a lot of familiar environments where they're saying, hey, we're going to go all the way over to this keep here, and there will be a dungeon there, and that dungeon will look the same as the cellar underneath someone's house, and this mansion will look the same as this building over here. Lot of reused assets in this game, big time. And yeah, it can definitely wear you down. The game, I don't know who's playing this game for how long. When I looked at how long to beat, I saw like 50 hours or like 30, 40 hours average. I did all the side quests. I did all of the character arcs. I did the main story. I beat this game in about 23 hours. It is not that long, so fortunately, the game does not overstay its welcome, where I felt like just as the dungeons were really starting to grate on me, like, oh my god, again with this place, the game did eventually end. It's also not accounting for some pretty unique things that can happen. While I thought the choice and consequence was kind of underwhelming, there were moments that it helped uplift a otherwise very familiar dungeon. One of them, for example, is, I'll just say, the fate of Meryl's camp. Through her character arc, it didn't go well. We'll say that. Those of you who are familiar with this game will know it didn't go well for me. The point being is, there is a lot of dungeons that feel overly repetitive, and that's just, once again, due to the time constraints. So if you go in understanding what Dragon Age 2 is, how long it took to make it, there's a lot you can walk away from appreciating it. It doesn't mean that its flaws don't exist, but I can totally understand why BioWare, Mark Dara, I can see why they were actually proud of this game, because for it to be made in the span of time it was made in, and for it to come out as well connected narratively, I mean, making a game story and world make sense in the overarching vision and have it naturally carried into a sequel and not feel like you've got to fix things retroactively. I mean, it's really impressive what they did. Granted, I'm not a huge fan of the combat. There weren't as many tracks in the game music, which is one of the most iconic parts of Dragon Age, that I was really attached to, but that didn't really take away from it. I thought overall this was a solid game, and it was actually really nice going back to it. I thought for sure I was just bathing in mediocrity. I was making jokes on my podcast because I went from Sonic Unleashed to this, and some people are like, dude, you're a masochist. Like, you went from those two games. There's so many other games you could play, and those are the two you picked. I get it entirely, but trust me, it's actually not that bad if you go in understanding what kind of game it was and how it was made. And if you have a vested interest in Dragon Age 4, certainly that helps. So that is my overall 2021 review for Dragon Age 2. Of course, a big reason I'm doing these as well is because I have this hunger for more BioWare games. I'm waiting for, of course, the Mass Effect Legendary Edition. But I don't want to play any more Mass Effect because I want to save all that Mass Effect energy for when the game releases with the Legendary Edition in May. So I'm just patiently waiting for the time that we can play that game. So hope you all enjoyed my Dragon Age 2 re-review. I actually never reviewed this game on the channel before, so this has been long overdue. I hope you enjoyed, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. What do you think of Dragon Age 2? Did you like it a lot more at launch? Did you go back and play it and like it less, or vice versa? Did you not like it, come back and appreciate it more? Have you never played it? Let me know. I'm looking forward to all of your feedback down below. Other than that, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below. And a big thank you to all of the patrons, all of the members who continue to support the heck out of the content here. I appreciate all of you. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.